Who let this filthy beggar touch my Ferrari? Somebody call the pound!
I just came to test drive, sir. My son set it up.
Test drive?
A snort.
Look at you. Oil-stained, raggedy, showroom mice stinking up my showroom like roadkill.
If you just check the name Foster.
I'm not checking anything. You people always have some story. Security, drag this black trash out! Wipe every surface he touched.
Please, sir. Just one call.
2 guards grabbed Theodore by the arms and dragged him across the polished floor. His boots squeaked on marble. They shoved him through the glass doors and dropped him on the pavement. He had no idea his son was 6 minutes away, and the man who called him trash was about to discover exactly whose father he'd just thrown out. 3 hours before the guards dragged him out, Theodore Foster was kneeling in his neighbor's driveway with his arm deep inside the hood of a 2004 Honda Civic. The morning sun hit the asphalt, warm and soft. Grease coated his knuckles. A strip of duct tape held the radiator hose in place while he tightened the clamp with a wrench that had belonged to his father. "Mr. Foster, you really don't have to do this," the neighbor said. A young woman, single mother, 3 kids under 10. "Hush," Theodore said without looking up. "This belt's about to snap. You drive another week, you're stranded on the highway with those babies in the back." He'd been doing this for years, every Saturday. Any car, any problem, no charge. The whole block knew if your engine coughed, you knocked on Theodore Foster's door. 68 years old, retired lead engineer from the Dearborn Assembly Plant. 31 years on the line, 15 of those running a team of 40. He could diagnose a misfire by sound alone. He could rebuild a transmission blindfolded. Ford Motor Company had offered him a plaque and a pension. He took both and went home to fix cars for free. His house was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a porch that leaned slightly to the left. Inside, the walls told the story. Framed photos of a younger Theodore in his factory jumpsuit standing next to engines he'd helped design. A photo of him holding a baby boy in a hospital room, grinning so wide his eyes disappeared. And next to that, a newspaper clipping from 6 years ago. Elliot Foster, 32, acquires Prestige Motors, youngest black owner of a luxury auto group in the Southeast. Theodore had raised Elliot alone after his wife passed from cancer when the boy was 9. He worked double shifts, packed lunches at 4 in the morning, taught his son everything about engines on a workbench in the garage, side by side, until the boy could strip a carburetor faster than most adults. Elliot had taken that knowledge and turned it into an empire. Foster Automotive Group, 14 dealerships across 6 states. Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, Bentley. A $200 million operation built on the foundation of a man who still wore oil-stained flannel shirts and drove a rusted 1998 Chevy pickup. Theodore never asked for anything. Not a dollar, not a car, not a title. Elliot begged him to move into something bigger. Theodore always said the same thing. "I got my tools, I got my porch, I got my neighbors. What else do I need?" But today was different. Elliot had called the night before. "Dad, tomorrow's your birthday. I want you to come to the dealership on 5th Avenue and pick any car you want. Anything. Just walk in, give them your name, and it's yours." Theodore had laughed. "Boy, what am I going to do with a Ferrari?" "Drive it, Dad, just once. You spent your whole life building cars for other people. It's time you had one built for you." Theodore had gone quiet. Then he said, "All right." I'll come by around noon. He didn't dress up. He didn't shave. He pulled on his usual flannel, his faded khakis, his work boots still flecked with grease from the morning's repair job. He climbed into the Chevy, turned the key. The engine groaned, then caught and pulled onto the road. The Foster Automotive dealership on Fifth Avenue was a cathedral of glass and chrome. Floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble floors, a row of Ferraris gleamed under precision lighting like jewels in a vault. The air smelled like new leather and money. Theodore parked the Chevy between a white Porsche Cayenne and a black Mercedes S-Class. The truck looked like a stray dog at a horse show. He stepped out, adjusted his collar, and walked through the front doors. Every head in the showroom turned. A receptionist's smile flickered and died. A salesman in a fitted suit looked him up and down, then looked away. A couple examining a Roma Spider whispered to each other behind cupped hands. Theodore didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on one car, a crimson Ferrari 296 GTB parked on a raised platform in the center of the showroom, rotating slowly under a single spotlight. He walked toward it, and 20 feet away, behind a glass desk, branch manager Derek Whitmore looked up from his laptop, saw Theodore Foster approaching his most expensive display car, and felt his lip curl into a sneer. What happened next would be captured on 4 security cameras, 2 cell phones, and 1 live stream, and none of it would end the way Derek expected. Derek Whitmore had been branch manager of the Fifth Avenue dealership for 3 years. In that time, he had never once sold a car to a black customer. Not because none had tried, because Derek made sure they didn't stay long enough to sign anything. He stood up from his glass desk, straightened his tie, and walked toward Theodore with the kind of slow, deliberate stride a man uses when he wants everyone to watch. "Excuse me." Theodore turned from the Ferrari. "Good afternoon. Beautiful car." "It is." Derek's eyes traveled from Theodore's work boots to his flannel collar, back down, then up again like he was cataloging every stain. "Which is exactly why I need to ask what you're doing next to it." "I'm here to test drive. My son called yesterday to arrange—" "Your son." Derek folded his arms. "And what's your son's name?" "Elliot Foster." Something flickered in Derek's face. A micro-hesitation. Then it vanished, replaced by a smirk. He didn't check the system. He didn't pick up the phone. He looked at Theodore's oil-stained fingers and made his decision in under 2 seconds. "Sir, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but Elliot Foster is one of our most valued clients, and you—" He paused, letting his gaze drag down Theodore's body one final time. "You are not Elliot Foster's father, not in this lifetime." "I am, sir. And I'm the Pope." Derek turned to the nearest salesperson. "Brenda, get over here. You need to see this." Brenda Cole walked over on clicking heels, a brochure tucked under her arm. Mid-30s, blonde, a customer service smile that disappeared the instant she looked at Theodore. "What's happening?" "This gentleman," Derek said, loading the word with enough sarcasm to fill the showroom, "claims he is Elliot Foster's father. He wants to test drive the 296 GTB. Brenda looked at Theodore. She looked at the rusted Chevy visible through the window. She pressed her hand over her mouth and laughed, a sharp, bright sound that bounced off the marble. "Oh my God, that's precious!" "Ma'am, I'm not trying to cause any problems," Theodore said. His voice was steady, unhurried, like a man who had learned long ago that volume never won arguments. If someone could just check the system for my name. There's no name to check, Derek said. He raised his voice now, projecting it across the showroom like an announcement. There's no appointment. There's no son. There's a confused old man who wandered into the wrong building and is now wasting everyone's time. He turned to Brenda. Get him one of those flyers for the used lot on 9th Street. Find something in his budget. Maybe a 95 Corolla with 160,000 miles and a missing hubcap. Brenda pulled a crumpled flyer from behind the reception desk and held it out to Theodore, between two fingers, arm fully extended, like she was passing garbage across a counter. Here you go, sweetheart. This is more your lane. Theodore didn't take it. He stood his ground, hands at his sides, spine straight. I appreciate the thought, ma'am, but I'm not here for a used car. My son told me to walk in, give my name, and choose any car I like. That's what I'm doing. Pick any car he likes? Derek repeated the words slowly, loudly, turning his body toward the showroom like an actor finding his audience. Two salesmen by the window stopped mid-conversation. A couple examining the Roma Spider turned to stare. A man in a cashmere coat lowered his espresso cup. Did everyone hear that? This man, look at him, walked in off the street, dressed like he just finished mowing somebody's lawn, and he wants to pick any car in the building. Laughter. Not nervous laughter, the deliberate, shared laughter of people who had already decided what Theodore was. A woman near the Portofino leaned into her husband. Should we say something? The husband shook his head. Are you kidding? This is the best thing I've seen all week. A young salesman in the back row pulled out his phone and aimed it at Theodore. He nudged his colleague. This is going straight on TikTok. Watch this. Derek fed off every chuckle, every whisper, every turned head. He stepped closer to Theodore, close enough that Theodore could smell his cologne, sharp, expensive, suffocating. Close enough that what came next landed like each word was a separate blow. Listen to me very carefully, old man. Cars like these are not for people like you. You can't afford the tires, you can't afford the oil change, you probably can't afford the bus fare to get home. Look at yourself. He pointed at Theodore's collar. Grease stains. You smell like motor oil and cheap sweat. This is a building for people with money, class, and standards. And you have none of the three. You are an embarrassment standing in the middle of my showroom. You are making my real customers uncomfortable just by being here. Silence. Not one voice in the room rose in Theodore's defense. Not one person shifted uncomfortably. They watched the way people watch something that doesn't concern them. Theodore swallowed once. His voice came out low, even completely unbroken. I've worked on engines my entire life. I know what these cars are worth. And I am telling you, sir, my son arranged this visit. If you just make one phone call, Derek let out a long theatrical sigh. Even if, and that's a fantasy, even if some distant relative of yours had once shaken Elliot Foster's hand at a gas station, do you honestly believe a man like him would send someone who looks like you into this building? Look at what you're wearing. Look at where you are. You don't belong here. You never did. And the fact that you can't see that tells me everything I need to know about you. He snapped his fingers toward the security desk. Ray, get this man out of my showroom, right now. Ray Patterson stood 6'3", 240 pounds. hired for exactly this kind of moment. He crossed the floor in 4 strides, each footstep echoing like a verdict. He placed a heavy hand on Theodore's shoulder. "Sir, we're done here." "I can walk myself out," Theodore said. "Not your decision." Ray's fingers pressed into Theodore's collarbone. "Wait." Derek held up his phone. That grin, the one that never reached his eyes. "I want this on video, for the team group chat." He hit record. "Everybody meet the man who walked in here thinking he could test drive a Ferrari." He panned the camera slowly from Theodore's worn boots to his quiet face. "Say your name for the camera, sir." Theodore looked straight into the lens. Theodore Foster. Theodore Foster. Derek zoomed in on his grease-stained hands. "Test drive applicant of the year. A real inspiration." He laughed. Brenda laughed behind him. The TikTok salesman laughed. The laughter cascaded off the marble and the glass and the chrome until the whole showroom rang with it, and it pressed into Theodore's chest like a stone. "All right, Ray, remove him." Ray grabbed Theodore by the upper arm and wrenched him forward. Theodore's boots scrambled for grip on the polished marble. His left foot caught the edge of a display platform. He stumbled hard. His knee cracked against the floor. Pain exploded up his thigh. Ray didn't slow down. He hauled Theodore upright by the arm, dragged him past the reception desk, past the espresso bar, past the couple who looked away, past the kid still filming, past Sandra Hayes, who stood near the entrance with her phone raised, jaw clenched, recording everything with hands that did not tremble. The glass doors slid open. Ray shoved Theodore through. Sunlight hit his face. He staggered forward, caught himself on the hood of a stranger's Porsche, and forced himself upright. His knee throbbed. His arm burned where Ray's grip had been. A red mark was already forming on his wrist. Through the glass behind him, Derek was already walking back to his desk, smoothing his tie, checking his teeth in his phone's camera. Another Tuesday afternoon, another nobody removed. Theodore stood alone in the parking lot. His hands were trembling. Not from age, not from weakness, from something deeper. Something that 68 years of patience and dignity had barely taught him to hold inside his chest without it breaking through. The last time he'd felt this specific brand of humiliation was 3 decades ago, when a plant foreman told him he'd never run a team because your kind don't lead. He proved that man wrong. He would prove this one wrong, too. He reached into his pocket. His fingers shook over the phone screen. He didn't want to call Elliot. Didn't want to ruin the boy's day. Didn't want to admit that a birthday surprise had turned into the oldest humiliation in America. But his hands dialed anyway, and 6 miles across town, Elliot Foster saw his father's name flash on the screen and felt something cold sink through his chest. Because Theodore Foster never called in the middle of the day. Not unless something was very, very wrong. The phone rang twice before Elliot picked up. "Dad, are you at the dealership?" Theodore looked down at his hand. Knuckles scraped raw from the fall. A thin line of blood drying across the back of his wrist where Ray's grip had torn skin. He could still hear the laughter bouncing off marble inside his skull. "I'm here," Theodore said, "but I think there was a misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding?" "The manager didn't believe me, said I wasn't your father, said I didn't belong." He paused. The words came before he could stop them. "They put their hands on me, son. Security grabbed me and dragged me across the floor. My knee hit the marble." Silence. The heavy kind. the kind that fills a room before something breaks. "Dad?" Elliot's voice had changed. The warmth was gone. In its place, something cold, controlled, and blade-sharp. "Are you hurt?" "Just a scrape. Knees sore. I'm fine." "Are you still there?" "Parking lot. Was about to drive home." Don't move. Don't leave. I'll be there in 15 minutes." The line went dead. Theodore slid the phone into his pocket and leaned against the Chevy's tailgate. The engine ticked as it cooled. Sunlight pressed warm against his face, but it couldn't reach whatever had gone cold inside him. Inside the showroom, the world had already moved on. Derek was at his desk, replaying the video on his phone. He watched it back with a widening grin, then airdropped it to Brenda. She pressed play, hand over her mouth, eyes bright with delight. "Oh my God, the part where he says, 'My son arranged it,' I'm literally dead." "Send it to the whole floor," Derek said. "Caption it something clever. 'When the neighborhood mechanic shows up for a test drive,' something like that." Brenda typed it out, slapped on 3 laughing emojis, and hit send. Within 5 minutes, every employee in the building had the clip on their phone. Within 10, it had jumped to a private industry group chat. 43 members, managers from rival dealerships, regional sales reps, a district director. The comments came in fast. "Bro, did he actually ask for a test drive, LMAO? That's what happens when you don't post a dress code at the door. Somebody get this man a bus pass and a reality check." Derek read every single comment. He screenshot his favorites, posted them back into the chat with fire emojis, and leaned back in his chair with his hands behind his head. The smile of a man who believed consequences were something that happened to other people. A young salesman named Kyle walked over, phone in hand, still grinning from the video. "Dude, that was iconic. The way his face looked when you told him to leave, priceless." "You should have seen him try to fight it," Derek said, standing there talking about my son, like we haven't heard that 1,000 times. "You think he'll come back?" Derek laughed. "With what, that rusted truck? He's probably halfway to the bus station by now." He wasn't. Theodore was still on the tailgate, hands folded, eyes on the glass. The showroom doors opened. Derek stepped outside, cigarette in hand, lighter already clicking. He spotted Theodore and his face twisted, not with guilt, with annoyance, like discovering a stain you thought you'd already wiped. "You're still here," smoke curled from his lip. "I thought we were finished. You need me to call the actual police?" "I'm waiting for my son, sir." "Your son." Derek took a long, slow drag. "The imaginary billionaire, right." He flicked ash toward the truck. A gray flake landed on the Chevy's hood. "You know, I've been in this business 11 years. You want to know how many times somebody like you has tried this, 'My cousin works here, my brother knows the owner'? It's always a hustle. Always." He pointed the cigarette at Theodore. "You people come in, touch cars you'll never own, waste everyone's time, then play victim when somebody tells you the truth. So here it is, one more time. You do not belong here. Go home. Take your fairy tales with you." Theodore said nothing. He looked at Derek the way a man looks at weather, something you endure, not something you argue with. "Nothing to say," Derek snorted. "Smart move, old man. First smart thing you've done all day." He turned and walked back inside. The doors closed behind him. A minute later, Brenda appeared at the entrance. She pushed the door open just enough to lean out, phone raised, and snapped a photo of Theodore sitting on the tailgate. She turned back inside, typing with her thumbs, and the showroom erupted in muffled laughter that Theodore could hear through the glass. She'd captioned it, "Still waiting for his son, LOL." Another wave of emojis. Another round of jokes at the expense of a man who couldn't defend himself. A young woman in heels and a designer bag clicked past Theodore toward the entrance. She glanced at him, and her stride quickened. She pulled her purse tight against her ribs. Theodore watched her go. He always noticed. 68 years of noticing. An older white man in a golf polo came out carrying a brochure. He studied Theodore, then the Chevy, then Theodore again. "Everything okay, buddy? You need direction somewhere?" "No, sir. Just waiting for someone." The slow nod. The nod that means I've already decided what you are. He climbed into his Mercedes and left. Theodore looked up. Clear blue sky. Not a cloud. A perfect day for a birthday, if you were living someone else's life. He thought about Clara. 19 years gone. Some days it felt like 19 minutes. She used to press her hand to the back of his neck when the world got too heavy. "Let them talk, Teddy. We know who you are." He could almost feel her fingers now, cool against the heat, steady against the shaking. He thought about Elliot at 7 years old, flat on his belly under this same Chevy, while Theodore pointed out the oil pan, the transmission, housing the exhaust manifold. "See this, son? This is where the power lives." Elliot never forgot a word. He turned those Saturday afternoons into a $200 million empire built on concrete garage floors and grease-stained hands just like his father's. And now, Theodore sat on the tailgate of that truck outside a building his son's money paid for, with blood drying on his wrist, a swelling knee, and the sound of laughter still ringing in his ears like a frequency that wouldn't fade. Inside, Derek had moved on completely. He was greeting a white couple in matching blazers, handshake eye contact, pulled-out chair espresso in a porcelain cup. "Let me show you something extraordinary." The full experience, the respect, the humanity, everything Theodore was denied. Brenda's phone buzzed again. Someone in the group chat had screen-recorded Derek's video of Theodore, spliced it with the photo she'd taken of him on the tailgate, and reposted it with a new caption. "Bro really thought he was going home in a Ferrari today." 51 laughing reactions, 8 shares. The clip was spreading beyond the industry chat, now leaking into personal feeds and DMs like water through cracks. Nobody checked the parking lot. Nobody thought to. Sandra Hayes sat in her car in the far corner of the lot, engine off, watching the footage she'd recorded. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Theodore's knee cracking on marble. Ray's hand clamped on his arm. The glass doors sealing shut behind him. She watched it twice. She opened Instagram, typed a caption. "I just witnessed something that made me physically sick at a luxury car dealership on 5th Avenue, and held her thumb over the post button. She didn't press it. Not yet. She wanted to see how this ended. Back inside, Derek checked his watch. 1:15. Clean schedule until 3. He had already forgotten Theodore's name. The old man was just a punchline now, a clip for happy hour, forgotten by Friday. He had no reason to think otherwise. He didn't know that Elliot Foster had pulled out of his office garage in a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan. He didn't know that Elliot had already called his attorney, his head of HR, and the dealership security contractor. He didn't know that Elliot's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, that his jaw was clamped in the exact way it clamped in boardrooms right before someone's world collapsed. Derek knew none of this. All he knew was that Tuesday was going perfectly. Problem handled, staff entertained, second espresso on the way. He crossed his ankles on the glass desk, lifted a porcelain cup stamped with the dealership's gold crest, and took a long, satisfied sip. 8 minutes away, a black Rolls-Royce was cutting through midday traffic like a blade through silk, and the man behind the wheel was not coming to buy a car. The black Rolls-Royce Cullinan pulled into the lot at 1:23 p.m. and stopped directly in front of the showroom entrance, engine running, hazard lights pulsing. Every head near the windows turned. Elliot Foster stepped out. Black suit, no tie, top button undone. He moved fast, not rushing but deliberate, the stride of a man who already knows exactly what he is about to do and who is about to pay for it. He didn't lock the car. He didn't glance at the building. He walked straight to the Chevy. Theodore was still on the tailgate. He saw his son and started to rise. "Elliot, listen, you don't have to." Elliot wrapped his arms around his father. Right there, in the open lot, in full view of the glass walls and everyone behind them. He held on for a long time. Theodore's hand came up slowly and rested on the back of Elliot's head, the way it had when the boy was small enough to carry. "I'm okay," Theodore whispered. "You're bleeding." Elliot pulled back and looked at the wrist, at the scraped knuckles, at the swollen knee straining against faded khaki. Something in his jaw tightened until the muscle twitched. "It's nothing, son. Let's just go home." "We're not going home, Dad." Elliot turned toward the showroom. "We're going inside." The glass doors slid open. Elliot entered first. Theodore followed one step behind, still favoring his right leg. Derek had been watching the Rolls-Royce through the window since it parked. He was already on his feet, already tugging his tie straight, already activating the smile he saved for six-figure conversations. He crossed the showroom with his hand extended and his voice pitched warm and eager. "Mr. Foster, what a wonderful surprise. Welcome back, sir. How can I—" "Where is he?" The smile cracked. "I'm sorry. The man you threw out of this building. Where is he?" Derek blinked. His eyes drifted past Elliot's shoulder and found Theodore standing just inside the door. The flannel shirt, the work boots, the dried blood on his wrist. The same man, in the same clothes, back inside. Derek's face began a slow collapse. The smile first, then the eyes, then something structural behind his expression that had never been tested before. That man, he came in here claiming he said he was my father. 2 words. Elliot didn't shout them. He didn't need to. His voice carried across the showroom the way a bell carries across still water. Clear, absolute, reaching every corner. That man is Theodore Foster, my father. The reason I'm standing in front of you. The reason this company exists. Derek's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. Elliot took one step closer. "Let me make sure you understand what you did today. This man spent 31 years as a lead engineer on the Dearborn assembly line. He rebuilt engines that went into cars you've never been qualified to touch. He raised me alone after my mother died. He worked double shifts. He packed my lunches at 4 in the morning. He taught me what a carburetor sounded like before I learned to read. Every car on this floor, every Ferrari, every commission check you've ever cashed, every dollar that flows through this building traces back to a man in a flannel shirt with grease under his fingernails who you just called trash." The showroom was a held breath. The espresso machine stopped its hiss. The couple in blazers stood motionless near the Roma Spider. Kyle's phone hung limp at his side, screen still recording, but forgotten. Brenda Cole was behind the reception desk, fingers frozen above the keyboard, the color leaving her face in visible stages, pink to pale to paper white. Ray Patterson had stepped out from behind the security desk when Elliot entered. Now he stood perfectly still near the back wall, arms at his sides, staring at the floor the way a man stares at the floor when he realizes there is nowhere to hide. "You filmed him," Elliot said. "You laughed at him. You had your security guard drag a 68-year-old man across the marble by his arm and shove him out the front door. And you did all of it without making a single phone call, without checking a single name in the system. You looked at a black man in work clothes and decided he was nothing." Derek tried to speak. "Mr. Foster, there was no way to know. You didn't try to know." Elliot's voice dropped quieter now, which made it worse. "That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And you are going to live with what that choice costs you." Theodore stepped forward and placed a hand on Elliot's shoulder. "Son, that's enough. Let it go." "No, Dad." Elliot didn't look away from Derek. "Not this time." The showroom held its silence like a church between hymns. Sandra Hayes stood near the entrance phone, steady, still recording. She had pressed post on the Instagram video 14 seconds before Elliot walked through the door. It was already getting shares, already getting comments, already building the kind of momentum that no press release could outrun. And Derek Whitmore, standing in the center of the showroom he had managed for 3 years, realized for the first time that the floor beneath his feet had already crumbled. He just hadn't finished falling yet. Elliot didn't wait for Derek to finish stuttering. He turned to the receptionist. "Pull up every second of security footage from the last 2 hours. Every camera. Back office, 5 minutes." The receptionist scrambled without a word. Elliot looked at Ray Patterson. "Were you the one who put hands on my father?" Ray's mouth worked uselessly. "Sir, I was following the managers." "Were you the one?" "Yes, sir." "Sit down. Don't move. Don't speak. You'll answer to HR and to the police if my father presses charges for assault." Ray lowered himself into the chair like a man whose legs had quit. His hands went flat on the desk. He didn't look up again. Elliot turned back to Derek. The showroom had become a courtroom, and every person in it knew who held the gavel. Derek stood in the center, tie loosened, arms limp, mouth still trying to build a sentence that could save him. "Mr. Foster, please, if I had known—" "You had every chance to know." Elliot's voice was low, surgical. "You looked at my father and decided who he was in 2 seconds. You didn't check the system. You didn't make a phone call. You chose to humiliate him. You chose to film it. You chose to have him dragged across this floor like he was less than human. Then you went back to your desk and laughed. It was a misunderstanding. I called this dealership yesterday. I gave the name Theodore Foster, a date, a time, and clear instructions. Treat him like a VIP. It was in the system. You never looked. Because you'd already decided a black man in a flannel shirt couldn't possibly belong here. Derek stared at the marble where Theodore's knee had cracked an hour ago. The scuff mark was still there, a gray streak near the display platform. Evidence written into stone. "You're fired," Elliot said. "Badge keys, company phone, On the desk before you leave. Please, Derek's mouth trembled. I have a family, a mortgage, 3 years. So does he, Elliot nodded toward Theodore, standing quietly by the door. He raised one alone after my mother died. 31 years of double shifts. And you treated him like garbage. Derek's shoulders caved. He pulled out keys and a badge and placed them on the glass desk. The click echoed like a sentence being handed down. Elliot turned to Brenda. You laughed in his face. You handed him a used car flyer. You walked outside, photographed him sitting alone on a truck tailgate, and posted it to a group chat for entertainment. Brenda's face was paper white. Her lips moved. Nothing came out. Suspended immediately. Full HR investigation. If the findings confirm what I already know, you're done here. Brenda nodded once, mechanical, hollow, like a woman hearing a diagnosis. Elliot addressed the room. Every employee in this building undergoes mandatory retraining, customer treatment, diversity professional conduct. Every single one. What happened today was not a one-time mistake. It was a culture that thrived because nobody in this room said a word while a 68-year-old man was dragged out the front door. That culture is dead, starting now. Silence. The couple in blazers set down their cups and walked to the exit without looking back. Kyle pocketed his phone and stared at his shoes. A woman near the Portofino pressed her hand over her mouth. Elliot exhaled. For the first time, something in his posture softened. He turned to his father. Dad, come with me. He led Theodore across the showroom, past the reception desk, past the espresso bar, past Brenda's empty chair, and stopped in front of the crimson Ferrari 296 GTB. Same car, same platform, same spotlight. Elliot opened the driver's door. This one. Happy birthday. Theodore looked at his son, then at the car, then at his son again. His eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. He nodded, slow, deep, and lowered himself into the seat. His calloused hands rested on the steering wheel. The leather was warm. The same hands Derek said were too filthy to touch the hood. Outside, Sandra Hayes' Instagram video had crossed 400,000 views. The comment section was a wildfire. Local news was calling. National outlets were picking up the hashtag. And Derek Whitmore, standing alone in the parking lot with a cardboard box and no job title, had no idea that the worst of it hadn't even started. Sandra Hayes pressed post at 1:41 p.m. By 2 o'clock, the video had 100,000 views. By 3 o'clock, 500,000. By midnight, it had crossed 4 million, and the number was still climbing. The caption was simple. I just watched a luxury car dealership manager humiliate and physically drag out a 68-year-old black man. That man turned out to be the owner's father. Watch the whole thing. The internet did what the internet does. It remembered. It searched. It found. Within hours, Derek Whitmore's name was everywhere. His LinkedIn was unearthed. His profile photo, the confident grin, the tailored suit, the dealership logo pinned behind him, became the thumbnail for every article, every tweet, every outrage thread. Hashtag Justice for Theodore began trending at 9 p.m. Eastern. By morning, it was the #1 hashtag in the country. News crews arrived at the Fifth Avenue dealership before sunrise, 2 satellite trucks, 4 reporters, a drone circling the parking lot like a vulture. The story had everything the cycle craved: race, power, humiliation, a villain with a face and a name, and security footage that played like a screenplay. The footage was devastating. 4 cameras had captured the entire encounter: Theodore walking in, Derek's theatrical performance, the laughter, the flyer, Ray grabbing Theodore's arm, the knee hitting marble, the dragging, the glass doors closing. The dealership's legal team released the footage voluntarily, on Elliot's orders. He wanted the world to see it, unedited, every second. Then the other stories started surfacing. A woman named Patricia Coleman called a local news station and said she'd visited the same dealership 2 years ago. She was black, a pediatric surgeon, and she'd come in wearing scrubs after a 12-hour shift to surprise her husband with a birthday car. Derek had refused to serve her, told her the showroom wasn't a waiting room, and suggested she try a Honda dealer down the road. She left in tears and never reported it. A man named Jerome Watts posted a video on Twitter. He was a retired Army colonel, decorated 3 tours overseas. He'd walked into the dealership 18 months ago, in civilian clothes, jeans, and a polo, to inquire about a Roma Spider. Derek told him the car was by appointment only and walked away. Jerome said he stood in the showroom for 15 minutes. Nobody spoke to him. He left and bought a Porsche from a competitor that same afternoon. A third account came from a young couple, Nathan and Denise Arlington, both attorneys, who said Derek had asked them for proof of employment before he'd even say hello. "He looked at us like we'd broken into the building," Denise told a reporter. "We showed him our bar cards, and he still made us wait 45 minutes while he served a white couple who walked in after us." 5 complaints, then 8, then 14, all from Black or Hispanic customers, all pointing to Derek Whitmore, all previously unreported because each person had assumed it was just them, that they were overreacting, that nobody would believe them. The EEOC opened a formal investigation within 72 hours. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission didn't just look at Derek. They looked at the dealership's entire history of customer interactions, hiring practices, and complaint records. Subpoenas were issued. Internal emails were pulled. The group chat, where Derek had shared the video of Theodore, was recovered in full. Every laughing emoji, every mocking caption, every silence from managers who saw it and said nothing. Derek hired a lawyer. The lawyer advised him to stay offline, stay quiet, and prepare for a civil rights lawsuit. Derek did none of those things. He posted a statement on Facebook at 2 a.m. 3 days after the incident. "I made a mistake in judgment, and I sincerely apologize to Mr. Foster and his family. I am not a racist. I have friends of all backgrounds." The internet tore it apart within minutes. The phrase, "I have friends of all backgrounds," became a meme before sunrise. Screenshots of the post were shared alongside the security footage, side by side, a split screen of arrogance and inadequacy. Theodore, for his part, said almost nothing publicly. Elliot's PR team released a single statement. "Theodore Foster is a private man who has spent his life serving his community. He does not seek attention. He seeks accountability." Local news requested an interview. Theodore declined. A national morning show called. Theodore declined again. A producer from a documentary crew left a voicemail. Theodore called back only to say, "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not the story. The story is what they do about it." That line, "I'm not the story," went viral on its own. The civil case moved fast. Theodore's legal team, retained by Elliot, led by a former federal prosecutor named Audrey Bennett, filed a civil rights complaint in state court within 2 weeks. The charges racial discrimination, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent supervision by the dealership's management chain. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, the live stream, the group chat logs, the parade of former customers willing to testify under oath. The hearing was held 5 weeks after the incident. Derek sat in the front row with his attorney, wearing a suit that didn't fit as well as the ones he used to wear. He'd lost weight. His eyes were hollow. The courtroom was packed. Reporters in the gallery, cameras outside, a line of spectators that stretched to the elevator bank. The judge reviewed the evidence in silence. She played the security footage on a courtroom monitor. When Theodore's knee hit the marble, a woman in the gallery gasped. When Derek's voice came through the speakers, "Get this trash out." The judge paused the video, removed her glasses, and looked directly at Derek. She didn't need to say anything. The look said it all. Derek was found liable on all counts, fined $250,000 in damages. Barred from holding any management or supervisory position in the automotive industry for 5 years. His name was entered into the EEOC's public record, a permanent scar on every background check for the rest of his career. Brenda Cole resigned before her HR review concluded. She posted no statement. She deleted all her social media accounts. She was gone within a week, as if erasing herself from the internet could erase what she'd done. Ray Patterson was terminated and charged with simple assault. He pleaded no contest and received community service and a suspended sentence. He never worked in private security again. The dealership itself faced a separate fine and was required to implement a comprehensive anti-discrimination training program, audited by an independent civil rights organization. But the story didn't end with punishment. It ended the way Theodore Foster would have wanted it to. Quietly, on a Saturday morning, in a driveway that smelled like motor oil and cut grass. 3 months after the incident, Elliot stood in front of the Fifth Avenue dealership and announced the creation of the Theodore Foster Foundation, a scholarship fund for young Black men and women pursuing careers in automotive engineering. The first class would receive full tuition, toolkits, and mentorship from senior engineers across the Foster Automotive Group. Applications opened the same day. Within 48 hours, over 6,000 had been submitted. Theodore was there for the announcement. He stood beside his son in a pressed shirt, the only concession he'd made to the cameras. When a reporter asked him how he felt, he thought for a moment, then said, "Proud, not of what happened, proud of what came after." That was the only interview he ever gave. The dealership on Fifth Avenue reopened under new management, a woman named Carolyn Reed, handpicked by Elliot from the Atlanta division. She was 41, sharp, fair, and the first thing she did was remove the espresso bar and replace it with a community welcome desk, staffed by a full-time liaison whose only job was to greet every person who walked through the door, regardless of what they were wearing or what they drove. On her first day, she gathered the entire staff in the showroom and said one sentence. "Every person who walks through those doors is a guest in this house. If you can't treat them that way, there's the exit." Nobody tested her. The crimson Ferrari 296 GTB sat in Theodore's garage for exactly 1 week before the neighbors found out. Word spread the way it always does on small streets. Someone saw the car through the open garage door, told someone else, and by Sunday afternoon there were lawn chairs in the driveway and children pressing their faces against the windows. Theodore let every single one of them sit in the driver's seat. He still fixed cars on Saturdays. The Honda Civic he'd been working on the morning everything started was running again. New belt, new hose, fresh oil. The young mother drove it to work on Monday without knowing that the man who'd fixed it for free had just been handed the keys to a car worth more than her house. Theodore never mentioned it. That wasn't his way. The Ferrari sat next to the rusted Chevy in the garage, side by side. One worth $350,000, the other worth maybe $800 on a generous day. Theodore drove the Chevy to the hardware store. He drove the Ferrari on Sunday evenings, windows down, taking the long way home through streets he'd known for 40 years, nodding at neighbors who waved from their porches. He never drove it to impress anyone. He drove it because his son had asked him to, and because Clara would have loved the color. 6 months after the verdict, a journalist tracked down Derek Whitmore for a follow-up piece. Derek was working at a car wash in a strip mall 11 miles from the dealership he'd once managed. He wore a blue polo with someone else's company logo on the chest. When the journalist asked if he had anything to say, Derek stared at the ground for a long time. "I think about it every day," he said. Every single day. The journalist asked if he'd ever reached out to Theodore to apologize personally. Derek shook his head. What would I even say? The journalist published the piece. It went viral too, but this time the comments weren't angry. They were quiet, reflective. People shared it with captions like, "This is what happens when you judge someone by what they're wearing instead of who they are." Theodore never read the article. He didn't need to. He had already forgiven Derek Whitmore the day it happened. Not because Derek deserved it, but because Theodore Foster had spent 68 years learning that carrying someone else's ugliness was a weight no man should volunteer for. The man they thought couldn't afford to sit in the car owned the entire dealership. And the man who threw him out, he spends his days washing cars that belong to strangers. Remembering the afternoon, he looked a quiet old man in the eye and made the worst decision of his life. What would you have done if you were standing in that showroom? Would you have spoken up? Would you have stayed silent? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story hit you somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell, because every week we bring you stories where the truth always wins.
So that's how it ended. The man who called Theodore just now washes cars at a strip mall, and the beggar he dragged across the floor. He owned the whole building, but here was staying with me. That same morning, Theodore, 68 years old, was on his knees fixing a single mom's car for free, and after the Ferrari, the lawsuit, 4 million people chanting his name, he went right back to the driveway because your worth was never theirs to hand you and never theirs to drag out the door. Real dignity nobody can take. And let me be honest, 20 people stood in that showroom, not one said a word. How often have we looked away because it wasn't our problem? So I will ask you straight, if you've been standing there, would your voice have broken the silence? Tell me in the comments. Speak up or stay quiet. I read everyone. Share this with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe, because here the truth always wins. They judged the man by his hands and forgot those same hands built everything they stood in.